Legend of Total War here, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Proving Grounds beta and provide a bit of a summary of it and I guess a review on what I think overall about the changes that they're trying to work with here. So, let's firstly focus on the changes that are implemented with this. There are two big things to note. Firstly is that the economies of most of the richest factions in the game have been significantly nerfed. So races such as the High Elves, Dark Elves, Empire Dwarfs, these guys tend to make a fair bit of money. Their economies have all been reduced significantly, so they just don't produce as much cash. But factions such as Norsca, Chaos, Greenskins, their economies haven't really been impacted that much because they already were not really big money makers. Now, the other big thing that's affected this game is the removal of supply lines. Now, that's only really going to affect players that play on very hard or legendary difficulty because it was originally on vanilla a 15% increase to your upkeep costs faction wide every time you recruit a new army. Players that played on easy, normal, or hard probably won't be impacted on that much because they were originally only 1, 2, or 7%. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that legendary difficulty has suddenly become a lot easier. I've played a couple of legendary difficulty campaigns, and I can actually say that the Proving Ground beta is probably more difficult currently with the Proving Ground beta than it is on vanilla, but only at the beginning of the campaign. Now, I'm going to provide a bit of a graph to sort of explain exactly what this is. It's just a very rudimentary graph. I know you guys love my graphs, but anyway, here we go. So basically it's this. This is the Proving Ground beta, this is the vanilla. Didn't put down any specific terms because it's just supposed to give a general gist of it. The beginning is slightly more difficult and you'll remain difficult for longer, but once you hit critical mass, so that's basically the point at which you start recruiting loads of armies or you just start steamrolling. Once you've reached that point, difficulty just disappears. Whereas in vanilla, it certainly does start going away, but not until, not for a long time. So I would say that Proving Ground beta is more difficult for longer, but then once you reach that point, it becomes so much easier than vanilla. Like, it becomes almost irrelevant that you're on legendary difficulty once you've reached that crossover point. And I'll use this Norsca campaign to sort of explain why that is. Now, if you want to post that graph somewhere on Reddit, be my guest. I'm not personally going to do it, but that's just drew that up real quickly to give you an example of what the campaign is like. Every campaign is going to be very different, and every player is going to play it very differently, but that was generally my experience with it. Now, Norsca is, in generally speaking, on vanilla, a low economy faction. They don't make a lot of money. The way that you thrive as Norsca is to instead reduce your costs, reduce your construction costs, reduce your upkeep costs. So, what changed with this campaign? This campaign went really, really well for me, okay? But the beginning was quite tough. I managed to confederate most of Norsca pretty quickly, and that actually led to a lot of problems because most of the settlements were really underdeveloped. Now, even though the -8 public order penalty was gone, I wasn't going around dealing with revolts. I was dealing with invasions. I had Dark Elf invasions, Empire invasions, but when I killed their armies, they sort of didn't come back for a long time, allowing me time to breathe. I was also able to have a lot more smaller forces protecting more areas, so I didn't need to have just one force roaming around everywhere doing everything just because I couldn't afford that extra 15%. Now, the critical mass point on this, and as soon as they told me about the removal of supply lines, I kind of was like, well, what about Norsca? Did you not think about this? So, in a Norsca campaign, and this is on legendary difficulty, in a Norsca campaign, if you finish the champion stuff, raise enough settlements, you'll get a few challenges that you have to defeat before Archaon shows up. And if you choose to fight Archaon instead of ally with him, you will eventually get a reduced upkeep of 75% for all units. And there is, in every single settlement that you get, every Norscan settlement, there is a building that reduces your upkeep cost by 1%. And every lord has the ability to reduce their upkeep by 10%. Now, in vanilla, it's 15%. But here's the thing, without supply lines, there is nothing stopping you at this point here from spamming out elite Doom stacks at absolutely no cost. This is why currently in the beta, the Norskins are by far the most powerful race in the game. I actually went full trolls with Throg because it didn't cost anything. It doesn't matter. I mean, he'll suck, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the recruitment cost, which is significantly higher. Although I've managed to get it down a fair bit, just with recruitment cost reductions and everything like that. But the base cost is like 4,000. So my first few mammoths were really hard to get. Getting my first mammoth army took a long time. That's why, like I'm saying with this graph here, it took longer to get to critical mass. But once I reached it, it was just game over. I probably defeated Chaos about 20 turns ago. And when I defeated Chaos, as in, Archaon, I had 2 armies of mammoths, and I was making no money. But the moment that was over, I was just like, that's it, I'm just going to start recruiting like crazy. And even though I'm recruiting in every possible settlement that I can, for mammoths, it's just that I can't spend the money that I'm making because I don't pay anything for my troops. I don't even know where that 463 army upkeep is coming from. I couldn't find it. I don't know who's costing me that money, because if you add up everything, it's 100%. And I'm just rolling over everything. And there's no way that the AI can stop me now, because I could just keep pumping out mammoths. They literally have to kill my mammoths faster than I'm recruiting them, because they don't cost anything. Now this is like the only race that can actually do this. This is why they're currently at number 1, in my opinion. But it's only once they've defeated Chaos. So I would say that Norsca is very much broken, but they could fix this. Another thing that I noticed was with the Skaven, for example. Now, I noticed that the game was a little bit more difficult for them, but only at the first 20 turns. So this would actually be very different for Skaven. It would actually be more like this. It would start going down straight away. Which is why I think the Skaven are now the strongest, second strongest faction in the game, with the Proving Beta. Proving Grounds. Excuse me. The thing is with the Skaven, is by not having supply lines, what I was able to do was recruit shitloads of lords, have them raid in regions where they were under no real threat, and gather just tons of food. And then I was able to have one Doomstack go around and basically instantly capture settlements at tier 5 because all the food was coming from elsewhere. And I was just having no issues at all. I took out the dwarfs by turn 70, because this is another thing to consider with the Proving Ground beta. The economies have been nerfed for the AI as well. They won't produce as much, and the Order Tide has been significantly nerfed. So because the Order Tide was nerfed, once I reached critical mass, which was extremely early with the Skaven, I just rolled right up to Karaz-a-Karak and just captured it. No problem at all. And that was just the end of that, really. It was essentially game over by turn 70. So Skaven campaigns currently, and this is with Clan Scryer, are really, really easy if you get a good, strong start. The other faction I tried was the Dwarfs with Clan Angrid, and that was a ball ache right at the start. I was really having a hard time because the forces of order were weaker, and the greenskins seemed to be a lot more aggressive. They seemed to be. Well, this the Skarsnik was. And I was really struggling at the start. Beastmen declared war on me. I had attacks coming at me from all sides. But those of you who watched the live stream already know this. But once I reached critical mass, because I didn't have supply line issues, I was able to recruit. It was like I went from 1 army to 4 armies like that. It was no problem. And then all of a sudden, my economy was just in overdrive, and nothing could stop me. I reached critical mass, and it became so much easier, because this is the big thing, is that in vanilla, the AI also reaches a point of critical mass as well. And many of you guys have experienced that. Like with the Empire, they'll confederate all of their elect accounts, and then they'll reach critical mass. Then they'll just start pumping out armies that you just can't really stop, the army factories. But in Proving Grounds, that doesn't really happen, or it doesn't happen until way later, to the point where I don't really give them the chance to do that. So I just reached critical mass before them. Even though it's been delayed for me, it's been delayed even more significantly for the AI. So the difficulty is sort of all over the place. Now, if I was to give my recommendation on what should actually be seeing, again, going back to the graph, I think, at least for legendary difficulty, what we should be seeing is easier beginnings and more difficult endings. We should actually see a line that actually goes up, where the game gets more difficult as the time progresses. So since the Proving Ground went with low economy and cheaper armies, long term, and we saw it go down this way, I'm thinking that instead of doing it that way, maybe high economy and high supply line issues would actually be better in the long run. As for the public order reduction, like with the on vanilla it's -8, on this it's nothing. I just didn't think about public order at all most of this campaign at all. It just wasn't an issue. So that was just an element. See, on vanilla you can use it to farm revolts in order to get experience, which you can't really do in the Proving Grounds. But yeah, at the same time, you didn't really need to do that in the Proving Grounds. So it's like you lose one thing, but then you don't need it. So it wasn't really a big issue. I really don't know where I stand in terms of leaving in the public order penalties at the beginning or not. Personally, the way I think it should actually go is that I think the game should get more difficult as it goes along. So I think if you had more economy to work with at the beginning, but then as your armies get more and more like aggressively more expensive, and as the AI, of course, they'll benefit more from the higher economy as well. That would lead to a harder end game. Because what I'm finding with the Proving Grounds is this: the beginnings are more difficult, but I get bored a lot quicker at the end. Like I'm ready to end this now because this is just, there is no challenge anywhere. Obviously, a mammoth army is one of the best doom stacks you can build, and I have so many of them that I'm just like auto-resolving these battles. And even if a mammoth gets killed, I'm just like, I don't even care, because that's where I'm getting at, because like there's no challenge left in the campaign. I've essentially won without actually achieving victory, because you gotta destroy all these different races. Can't be bothered. So I would say that at least for legendary difficulty, the goal, it isn't quite there with the Proving Ground. I think I would prefer vanilla, because I do get a longer lasting challenge with vanilla, even if the beginning's not quite as difficult. And that's sort of where I'm at. In terms of the lower difficulties, I really can't comment on that much. I believe people who are playing on the lower difficulties in general are quite happy with the Proving Grounds, and that's great. But that's not where I'm at, and I can't really comment on it. So that's my thoughts on it so far. Personally, I think they should basically reverse course on this and just go the other way. High economy with high upkeeps towards the end of the campaign. I think that might actually see more challenge. But that being said, without having tested that, I don't know. But I could definitely say that low economy with no upkeep penalties will eventually lead to just super easy endgame. Where once your economy is finally under control, it doesn't matter anymore. And I just was recruiting like crazy, even if it is double recruitment cost. There are certainly ways that you can cheese things that weren't available prior to the Proving Grounds beta. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this. I don't want to ramble and go around in circles too much, but I hope you guys get a bit of a picture of what my thoughts are on this. It was definitely fun to play. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely think there's more tweakings, and I don't think that they should just roll in this into the current build and make it essentially vanilla just yet. I think there's more work that needs to be done, and Creative Assembly, they are still working on this. And it is also really good that they're having two separate builds to sort of work things out, because balancing in this game, it can't be easy. Everybody's so different, and when you change one thing, it wildly affects some other things, and you get rid of one cheese and 3 more cheeses appear out of nowhere. It can be very difficult to balance, and I totally appreciate that. Anyway, that's the end of this one, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it, hope you've learned something, and I'll see you next time, fuckers.